Hannah Williams from Salary Transparent Street. We're in Louisville, Kentucky. Let's go ask some people what they do and how much they make.
I am an owner of a multi-service office, which I do like notary stuff and
cool.
plate transfers and all that stuff.
How much do you make doing what you do?
I would say monthly revenue would be like 12.
Like 1,200 or 12,000?
Yes.
12,000, nice. Do you feel fairly compensated?
Oh, yes.
How did you get into this?
Well, we own a construction company, and I'm like an activist for the Latino people, and I really help all the Hispanic population here. So,
What kind of advice would you give to anyone interested in doing what you do, or just in general, what have you learned?
this is something I've wanted. I was a stay-at-home mom like for 20 years, and after my husband passed away like 12 years ago, I decided I have to do something. So I ended up doing what I'm doing right now, and I like it. I love it.
What's your favorite thing about doing what you do?
Interacting with the people.
What do you do for a living?
We do a lot of exterior cleaning for the city and just clean up everybody else's mess.
Important work. How much do you make doing what you do?
Well, we use our pressure washers. I have a couple of helpers that help me. It just depends on the job. Monthly with my company, I have about 3 or 4 employees at the moment.
Yeah.
We do about 20 to 30,000 a month.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
Yeah, it's pretty good.
What are some of the pros and cons of your job?
Some of the pros, of course, is I can make my own schedule. I get a little break in the winter, which is nice. By the time spring comes around, I'm ready to get back to work, of course.
What are some pieces of advice that you would share with anyone, maybe new graduates, or what have you learned in general?
You don't necessarily have to get out there and get this major degree or anything like that. Sometimes you can find a little niche or something. And I felt like this was kind of my way to get out there and make a difference and make good money doing it.
I'm an entrepreneur. I do lashes and I do brows, waxing, bikini, lips, underarms, all of it.
How much do you make doing what you do?
Daily you can make from 500 to, 2,000.
In a day?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. What does your month look like?
It just depends, the season, but I do really good, yes.
How did you get into this?
When you get tired of working for people and you want to make your own money, make your own schedule, you got to do what you got to do.
What are some of the pros and cons of your job?
You have to be friendly. I'm not really a people person, but in order to be successful, you have to venture out and eventually, in order to expand, you have to be willing to be a people person. That's a con for me because, again, I don't like to interact with a lot of people, but it works out.
What are some things that you've learned as an entrepreneur that you would share for anyone else interested in doing what you do? Any words of advice?
I would just say don't give up. Going to be days where it's slow. Then you're going to have your fast days where you're like, you know what, I can do it 7 days a week. Just keep going. It does get hard, but just don't give up is the best thing.
To summarize it, I do mentorship, I do motivational speaking, and I also am in entertainment as well.
How much do you make doing what you do?
Between 50 and 80, yeah.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
No, not at all. I'm still waiting on that quantum leap, and I'm working, and I trust that it's coming. So investments as well, getting my hand into real estate, just the starting range.
How did you get into motivational speaking and leadership?
It's kind of just like a natural knack. I've always been a talker, a writer, and I just had people encourage me around me that said, you should really do something with that talent, and so I began to do it, and lily pad after lily pad came, and it led to motivational speaking.
What are the pros and cons of your job?
Okay, some of the pros is that you get to kind of throw a pebble that continues to ripple, so you get to motivate people, and they take that and they internalize it, and they go out and they can do amazing things. The con would probably be sometimes when people contact you to do speaking, they're like, can you speak? And it's like, okay, can I have a rubric on what's my demographic?
A budget.
A budget. And that's another thing. When you're really into civic engagement and serving your community, sometimes it can become habitual for you to work for free. So you have to learn how to ask what you're worth, and then also figure out a measurement, a metric system, so you can know what you are worth.
What career advice would you share with anyone interested in doing what you do, or what have you learned in general that you want to share?
Know your core values, because if you know what it is that you stand for, then that can help you determine and be a compass for what it is that you want to do or the best approach to take to something.
I'm a security guard.
Well, how much do you make doing that?
$19 an hour.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
Yeah.
How'd you get into it?
I looked at it on Indeed.
How was your experience with them?
It was pretty great, real quick.
And you got the job. What are some of the pros and cons of your job?
Just pretty much look out for bad people.
What pieces of advice would you share with anyone interested in either doing what you do, or what have you learned in general?
Don't chase nobody.
I'm a supervisor, a janitor here at
How much do you make doing what you do?
$15 an hour.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
Not really, but I just started, so
Okay.
hopefully there'll be growth opportunity. Been here for about a week now, and I can't ask for anything better.
What are some of the pros and cons of your job?
I don't have anybody watching over my shoulder, which
Nice.
is something that I value very highly. And the cons is it's a little bit of stress. I have to deal with the dock and things like that, so some things are out of my control, and it frustrates me, but overall, can't really complain.
That's a great mindset. What career advice would you share with anyone interested in doing what you do, or just what have you learned in general?
Know your trade and do it well. Come to work every day. That's about all you can do.
I'm an assistant general manager in Louisville, Kentucky.
How much do you make doing what you do?
Between $50,000 and $75,000.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
Yeah.
How did you get into your job?
Started waiting tables when I was young in college, and I just had a knack for it. I love it. I love dealing with people, and I stuck with it.
Worked your way up. I love that. What are some of the pros and cons of your job?
It can be stressful, but the pros are free food every day and the people that you get to meet.
What career advice would you share with anyone interested in doing what you do, or just in general? What have you learned?
Just stick with it and gain as much knowledge as you can along the way.
I'm an optician, a licensed optician.
How did you get into this?
So it's a family business. My grandpa bought a business back in the 80s, then it's my dad's now, and I'll be next up.
How much do you make doing what you do?
Usually around 60 for individual income.
Nice. What are the pros and cons of your job?
Well, working with family has mostly cons.
Oh, really?
We got flexible schedules, like me being here this morning when I could be at work, like in tomorrow too. But also, just working with the public has its own challenges.
What career advice would you share with anyone interested in doing what you do?
Do what you do and do it well. If you're going to get into a trade or whatever, just don't do it part way. Make yourself better every day.
In the mornings, I work loading brown trucks. That's pretty physical. And I have a little locksmithing business, and I also paint, do signs, and sometimes wash windows.
How much do you make doing what you do?
So I'd say somewhere between 70 and 120.
Which one pays the most? Like, which one do you like the most?
Painting pays the most. Locksmithing is the funnest because you're presented with a challenge and you have to figure it out for the people. Basically like putting together puzzles, different challenges every day.
How did you get into this?
Well, I met a girl. Yeah, I needed to come up with something to do for money because I was just delivering auto parts part-time, which did not pay very much at all. So just kind of like looking for different things to get into. And I had a friend who was a locksmith, and so he taught me the trade. And I wouldn't say that that's like a great modern thing to get into necessarily. It's a little archaic, but it's fun.
What career advice would you share with anyone just based on what you've learned?
I would say especially in the modern day that we're living in, don't be scared to do more than one thing because it keeps it fun, keeps it new, and just do maybe a bunch of little things to make up your payday.
I am a video editor and videographer.
How much do you make doing what you do?
That number varies wildly because I do mostly contract work. On the low end, $20,000 a year up to about 40.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
For what I do, yes. I don't make much, but that's more because we're a small business and we're growing, and so there's not much work and I get paid per project.
What are some of the pros and cons of your job?
Biggest pros are definitely I'm able to work on my own schedule. I have a lot of say because it's a small business. I have a lot of say in how we're growing, how we're establishing procedures, and building the future of the company. The biggest cons are because of the inconsistent work schedule. Sometimes it means, hey, I'm in the office till 3 a.m. and stuff like that. Or the smaller quantity of work means that I'm not really making as much as I could be at other places, but I'm hoping to get that back long-term in equity.
What career advice would you share with anyone interested in doing what you do? What have you learned along the way?
Biggest advice that I could give to anyone looking to get into this is to pick up your phone and start shooting. These days, if you've got an iPad like this, you can do very high-end video editing on that. And for most of the people in the field, you don't have to go get a degree. You don't have to have years of experience in this crazy portfolio. But if you show that you're willing to, hey, I want to learn, I want to improve, then I think that that's going to be one of the base keys to getting into this field.
I'm in video production.
How much do you make doing what you do?
I own my own business, so I would say I make about $100,000.
Do you feel fairly compensated?
Yeah, I pay myself, so I mean, if I'm not, I can take it up with my boss, I guess.
What got you interested in video production?
I applied for a job back in my 20s and didn't get it, and they wouldn't even interview me, and so for whatever reason I made a video. I never made a video, so they still wouldn't interview me, so I made another one, and then I made another one, and then I turned it into a career. I was selling YouTube videos door to door when YouTube was about 6 months old, but it worked out in the end.
What are some of the pros and cons of your job?
I would say with any job, even if this is my dream job, it's something I love doing, there's still the meticulous things that you have to do, the things that aren't fun out of it. So you have to do the not fun stuff, and that means bookkeeping, accounting, sometimes managing people, but also that would be some cons. But the pros is I get to travel, I get to do what I want to do, I get to meet a lot of people, I get to find things that I'm interested in, I get the back tour of pretty much every kind of industry factory, I get the VIP tour to find out how things work before I shoot them.
What advice would you share with anyone interested in doing what you do?
I do my own business, but honestly with anything, just do it. Just start doing it. Energy creates energy, and just start doing it even at the smallest level.
I'm in sales. I work for the risk industry for the food and beverage sector.
How much do you make doing what you do?
So we actually start off around 90,000 in salary, and then anywhere from a 5 to 10% commission. So I think on average, most of the people on my team are in the 120 to 140 range.
What are some of the pros and cons of your job?
The pros, well, as you can see, it's the middle of the day, and I'm out here enjoying the sun. So we're left alone. We're a very traditional sales company where here's your number, make your number, play golf every other day of the week.
Right.
We don't really care. So as long as you're hitting those numbers and things like that, then no one ever really messes with you. Some of the cons, we still are selling to customers. That can be difficult because from a sales perspective, you're dealing with a lot of people that are very extroverted, that sort of thing. Well, the clientele that we call on is very technical. A lot of times they're coming with PhDs, and food scientists and things like that. So sometimes you have a very extroverted salesperson trying to sell to a very introverted buyer.
It's a different language.
It's a very different language. Yeah, I've been in it now for about 10 years, so very, very rarely does someone stump me, but it occasionally does happen.
What career advice would you share with anyone interested in getting in your industry, or just what have you learned in general that you think is valuable to share?
I guess the easiest thing that I think of first when I'm talking to friends and family is don't get into sales. It's very difficult. It takes a special kind of person to do it and really be successful at it. However, in our industry, there is a lot of other avenues that you can take. So, for instance, young kids that are graduating with a food science degree, part of my job in the outreach is to go out to universities and explain to kids that, hey, once you get this degree, you can become an auditor and you make six figures, you travel, you can do whatever you want. So there's a lot of outreach because our industry is suffering from a lack of resources in auditing. So that's been, when we talk to younger kids or, people ready to graduate, we are very clear that, hey, this is a career path. Because I just don't think that, sadly, the American education system has really prepared them to understand that you may not be a pro baseball player, but that doesn't mean that there aren't 900 other jobs that can keep you in the same industry.